She's the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor, and she's back here tonight. Welcome in. Catherine Taylor is my guest. She faces off against Dan McKee for that, controversial position in the sense that some people think it's not even necessary to have. But we'll enjoy spending some time with Catherine Taylor. She just earned an endorsement from the one of the teachers' unions, which is, unorthodox for a Republican, but there's a lot behind that we'll get to this evening. It's a pleasure to have you aboard on this Wednesday night on My State of Mind. Let's go to the videotape, or the preview of the videotape anyway. Yeah, it was a spirited debate, and we have some videotape from it. Last night at Sappensley Hall, as the mayoral candidates convened in a pretty well run and pretty lively debate on the issues and more. Allan Fung is crying foul, and I think I know why, but it may not be in its best interest to keep complaining about it. We'll explain that one. And I think America's confidence has been shaken when a guy can climb the wall, the fence, and actually get himself into the East Room before he's tackled, don't you think? An update on that late this afternoon. This is a tragic case involving a little girl in Cumberland who lost her life, and I want to talk a little bit about the reaction that I think all of us ought to have to it. And then there's this one, and the reaction I think America ought to have to it, because protocols may not be where they need to be. All right, let us dig in, and then we'll get to Catherine Taylor and your state of mind, of course, at the end of the broadcast. Headline and the first item on this spirited debate notion. We had points of attack, according to the Providence Journal, the co-sponsor of the debate last night. Walt Buteau gives us a wrap-up.
Leave behind all of the corruption and what led the ex-mayor to go to jail.
Criticizing Cianci was not left behind for long. Republican Daniel Harrop.
Mr. Cianci has a half-century history of recurrent, thuggish, criminal behavior.
Jorge Elorza called Cianci's Renaissance City dangerous and corrupt.
We had a police department that was plagued by scandal, a cheating scandal, a promotion scandal. It was under investigation by the Department of Justice.
And both of Cianci's opponents blamed him for the city's current pension system, which is about 30% funded. When Cianci tried to respond, there was this.
We didn't make decisions in a vacuum. In a vacuum.
The question.
Can I, Professor, this isn't the classroom where you can tell your students what to do. This is a political debate.
The question.
That's what
Need answer.
I know how tough it is to be mayor. The other two don't know how tough it is to be mayor. They think going to wave a magic wand and everything's going to happen.
Elorza talked up his plan to get grants to pay for more police officers. Cianci argued the grant money is gone and skewered Elorza for comparing Providence with other cities.
And he wants the city to look like Baltimore. Did he say Baltimore? Do you remember the show they had about Baltimore? It's called Homicide on television.
Is the money there?
Absolutely. And if it's not there, then we have to create the jobs that are going to bring the money to the city. The only way out of this is by creating jobs.
Harrop again pushed the idea of receivership, saying that's the quickest way back for Providence.
And neither of these guys are going to have the strength to correct the city like the Republicans will. And they have no plan. And so we keep putting forward with a plan, and we think that message will eventually get out there.
Dan Harrop, very good recap by Walt Buteau. I don't know where you start and end with a recap from that kind of a debate, but Dan Harrop made some, I think, pretty salient points about the financial structure problem of the city of Providence. Eventually, it's going to have some kind of different kind of financial foundation, perhaps a review board, if not the receivership process. And neither Buddy Cianci nor Jorge Elorza want to admit to that. Elorza, though, keeps sticking with the idea that he's going to be able to fund 100 cops and get this grant money. Walt asks him, is the money there? Yeah. But if it isn't, we're going to have to, yeah. But if it's absolutely, it's there, then it's absolutely there. The truth is he's learning, if he didn't know already, that it's not there. So adding 100 police officers now, he says, over 8 years is still something he's got to find the money for. And he hasn't talked about that yet. Neither has Cianci. But interestingly enough, I thought Cianci was on his game in a big way. Elorza held his own pretty well, and Harrop showed himself to be quite the antagonist. So the voters have quite the decision to make, and the 21% undecided in the Channel 12 Pro-Joe poll have some work to do. Pay attention. Next item. On the governor's race, Allan Fung cries foul. Here's the headline. They're going to the Board of Elections to try to stop this Gina Raimondo ad. The Democrats say, well, this is really an ad not for Gina Raimondo, but for, well, sort of like for Jack Reed. Yeah, that's the ticket. And there's spending limits that were well within, and we can do that. And so the party can pay for this ad. And Fung says, no, it's a Gina ad, and you can determine.
Rhode Island has one of the highest unemployment rates in the country. Gina Raimondo's the only candidate for governor with business experience helping create jobs. The only one who solved big statewide problems. And the only one with a plan to work with Jack Reed to bring back manufacturing jobs.
I'm Gina Raimondo, and Rhode Island families are struggling. I hear you, and we're going to get Rhode Islanders back to work.
I'm Jack Reed, and I approve this message too.
Yeah, it's a Gina ad. Jack Reed's got his election sewn up. That's a Gina ad. And Alan Fung is right, and the Republican Party is right. I don't think they're going to get much from the State Board of Elections on this, and they've got to be careful because the more you complain about it, the more attention is drawn to the ad and the more attention is drawn to the opponent. A lot of this stuff is hardly policeable, and television stations have to, by law, take the ad and let local, state, or federal election organizations kind of work it out on their own. It's kind of messy. Next item. We have confidence shaken. I just think America's confidence has been shaken by this White House debacle with the Secret Service. The headline in the Washington Post. It's a work culture, huh? CBS has a little bit on the hearings from yesterday.
How was he able to sprint 70 yards, almost the entire length of a football field, without being intercepted by guards inside the fence?
Pearson admitted the agency failed in its mission to protect the president.
It's clear that our security plan was not properly executed.
We need to have a outside review of the agency.
The White House is still expressing full confidence in those who guard the president and his family.
Oh, well, what's the White House supposed to do? Say, yeah, you know what? We have no confidence in the people that guard the president? That's what Congress's oversight is all about, no doubt, to make sure the Secret Service is doing its job. And just before the taping of our broadcast this evening, Ms. Pearson resigned. That's the first step in rebuilding the culture that none of us in America thought had been missing. I mean, the White House, the president, are you kidding me? A guy gets in an elevator armed? A contractor of some kind in a hotel? What the heck is going on out there? I think most of America demands the answer, and Congress needs to put the full court press on, no doubt, on that agency. Coming back here to home, we've got this very, very sad story where the enterovirus D68 had a part now, we learn, in taking the life of a 10-year-old little girl at the community school in Cumberland. I mean, there's not a parent here whose heart just doesn't fall out of their chest broken over this. And of course, after that, parents worry about whether it's safe to send the kids to school. Now, this virus is, well, rather pedestrian in its nature alone, I guess. Dr. Michael Fine had a press conference at the Board of Health today.
Combination of Staph aureus and D68 is very rare. This is an isolated case, and which obviously led to a tragic outcome, but is not something we expect to see again. For most people, enterovirus D68 will be a mild illness. For many of us will have it, and it's nothing for most of us more than a cold. The care is entirely supportive. There's no vaccine and there's no specific treatment, as we don't have treatments for the common cold.
And there's also things you do, like you do with the flu, to try to prevent the transmission of it. There's controversy in town because the superintendent of schools sent out an email to parents saying there was no connection to this enterovirus that has gotten attention across the country. It turns out the CDC reported only yesterday back to the State Department of Health that there was. There was an at this time inclusion in the email from the superintendent of the Cumberland schools. It seemed to me he did the professional and right thing, and I hope parents in Cumberland and beyond do less finger pointing and more paying attention to the little things and how their children are feeling. Parents will do their job, I'm sure. Focus on that and pray for that family. And lastly, yeah, pray for America in this one. This is a different kind of conversation. CNN.com has this headline, yeah, didn't and didn't. Here's a piece of the information that you might be looking for.
CDC staff have arrived in Dallas to help local health officials contain the Ebola virus now that the first U.S. patient has been diagnosed. They're working to track down anyone who had contact with the male patient when he had symptoms.
And we'll go through every minute of each day with his family to understand who might have been exposed and every healthcare interaction he had.
Ebola spreads through direct contact with bodily fluids from an infected person showing signs of the virus. The patient didn't have symptoms of Ebola when flying from Liberia to the U.S. on September 19th.
There seems to be no criteria here to check the health, welfare, and test people who are coming from Liberia, Africa in general. And it seems to me that we better hurry up and get one, don't you think? All right, when we come back, Catherine Taylor, candidate, Lieutenant Governor. Stay with us. The Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor is here, having eased through the primary. Here's a headline that I found interesting, and of course, there's a dynamic of union look-see into the Republican candidate, the AFL-CIO taking a look, and the AFT, I think, gave a thumbs up. That would be one of the teachers' unions, at least, to you. Catherine Taylor, nice to have you aboard. Thanks.
Nice to be back on, Dan.
So you did. You got an endorsement from the teachers' union, correct?
I did.
How'd you grab that one?
Well, they were interested in looking at me after the primary. I mean, they were firmly in Ralph Mollis's camp beforehand, so it wasn't an open question before. And so they wanted to see what they wanted to do in the general election, so invited me to come in. And I think two things attracted them to my candidacy. One is my history of collaborative, proactive work with Council 94 while I was directing elderly affairs that resulted in a grievance-free tenure there, which I'm really very proud of. And also the work that I want to do as Lieutenant Governor in promoting the status and advocating for the elevation of the pay of direct care workers, of people who are, elders and all of that.
It should be pointed out that this teachers union has healthcare professionals inside it versus the NEA, which does not.
That's correct. That's correct. And just in terms of the teachers, I'm known to a lot of them because I'm a Providence Public School mother, and I've served on the PTO and the school improvement team and the local advisory commission for parents of children with disabilities. So they're aware of how I just try to work to improve things in a collaborative way.
But let's not kid ourselves. They despise your opponent, Dan McKee, for his work on charter schools, do they not?
I couldn't speak to that. That's what people say.
Of course you can speak to that. You're well aware of the environment that exists out there, so I'm not diminishing that you got a nice endorsement. But the truth is that this is an unorthodox situation in the way the game is generally played, with the union supporting a Republican candidate. Good, bad break for you? I don't know. What's your position on charter schools?
I think charter schools are an important option, and I think that they provide a lot of data for us about new approaches that need to be brought back into the public schools. The thing that I'm concerned about is that we don't develop a shadow school system, and that we make sure we continue to focus the lion's share of our resources and our energy on the Main Street public schools. One of the things that I focus on is, we have about 4 times as many kids with special needs in the public schools as we do kids in the entire charter school system. And the fact that that's an unfunded mandate from federal law to make sure that those kids are well served is something that schools struggle with, and I think that the excitement around charter schools sometimes distracts us from that huge issue in the public school system that can really impede our ability to get the progress that we need for all of our kids.
Did you have to offer an opinion on the mayoral academy to this teachers union?
That was the opinion that I offered.
In general?
In general.
Well, we all know that charter schools are different depending on, there's all fruit, and then there's bananas, apples, oranges, and watermelons. Same thing in the charter school environment. So specifically, McKee's Mayoral Academy Initiative, yes, no, like it, don't?
Again, it's exactly what I said, and I'm not really sure what the union's particular issues are with him and how he worked to set those up. I will say that education isn't within the purview of the Lieutenant Governor's office, and we made that clear to each other.
But are you suggesting that everything that's within your, at least, goal for your role as Lieutenant Governor is actually written in stone as well?
There are the 3 statutory commissions that I think the Lieutenant Governor, whoever is in that role, should do and do well, and I think there are opportunities in governing those 3 commissions and in what comes out of them to propose some ideas to the Assembly or to fit things together for the Assembly and the next governor so that we can see missing pieces of our economy and move us forward. I do think it's important that whoever is in that role, and I do hope it's me in the next 4 years, pays attention to those commissions, because there's really important oversight, coordinating, and policy work to be done there.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk more about some of Catherine's ideas and the notion that we've got some pretty sharp women in this statewide environment this year. Stay with us. Welcome back in. Catherine Taylor is my guest. She's the Republican candidate for lieutenant governor, having skipped past Carrie Young in the Republican primary. She was no real contender. Dan McKee is going to be one. Full disclosure, most people know that he's an old pal of mine, and I argue with him on a lot of ideological issues. I think he's an earnest, though, public servant, and I think you would be an earnest public servant. And so I think you've got 2 quality people who are going to be seeking this office. I hope that you'll share a table with him here in a debate before. So we'll have a conversation, not a debate, but a forum with the 3 of us and kind of hammer out the issues prior to the election. I mentioned that there's a field of strong women in this race. Obviously, Gina Raimondo, the leading candidate, most say, for governor on the Democratic side. Nellie Gorbea, who upset Guillaume de Ramel as the Secretary of State candidate, and now you. You've done something interesting, though. If I look at your website, you've kind of, photographed yourself with those women. Are you playing?
No. That was a link to a piece that was done by Allison Bologna on the 3 women candidate, and that was their graphic.
But you don't hide it.
No.
So tell me about that. Tell me about, first of all, do you think that you'll be able to ride the coattails of what might be a women's momentum in this particular race? Yes, no?
Well, goodness, that's a question for a Republican, because I'm on a Republican slate and I support those candidates.
You support the Republican
candidates.
Fung, not Raimondo.
That's correct.
Carlavale, not Gorbea.
I support my slate. So that really is an interesting question, and I think there's a lot of buzz and excitement over the fact there are 3 very qualified, strong women in the top 3 races. But I think what voters are really telling us is that they're looking at qualifications, and they're looking at the candidates' theories of government and how government should be used, and they're not looking at gender, and they're going to select us despite our gender, or without that even being a factor in the end, that they're really being gender blind.
I think for the most part you've been modest about using the gender tool, so to speak. I don't think the same is the case for the governor candidate, Gina Raimondo, who says, we need a Democrat, we need the first woman governor, and by the way, we need someone who's really good at their job. It's not easy being a woman in politics, even in 2014, though, is it? It's still a head count thing, and we can talk about this all night, but do you have a gut check on where we are in terms of dealing with the woman thing?
My experience, and it was the same 4 years ago too, I have to say, that with some voters it's a plus, with some voters it's a liability, and it's sort of a net wash when it comes to what my gender is. Some people find you more approachable. Some people, have stereotypes about where women should and shouldn't be. I generally have been very gratified that voters have just heard my message, and so for me, I just don't find it really to be a factor one way or the other.
What about
as a net.
Okay, what about being a Republican? I mean, we've talked issues before, and you can go to Catherine's website and you can see some of what she thinks about in terms of her own program for lieutenant governor and some of her entrepreneurial ideas. But a Republican always has a challenge in a statewide race. Ballot position, and still the reminiscence of the last, or I should say the last master lever issue that we're going to find.
It's
not easy, right?
No, that's true.
So what are you doing to battle that?
I'm getting my ideas out there, and they are small government ideas, and they are getting the government out of the way of individual and business decision making. But I think starting the conversation and getting my foot in the door is important first. And when people hear what I have to say, they like it. And when they hear I'm a Republican next, then they they can remember that there have been Republicans in the past that they've supported that have worked out well for them.
We have always wondered about the legitimacy of Lieutenant Governor's office in general. We've talked about that in the past. So tell me, what kind of governor would you be? God forbid you had to be the governor.
Oh, God forbid, indeed, because that would be a period, I think, of great trauma in the state. And I think the first thing that a governor in that position would need to do is really guide the people of Rhode Island through a tough situation and inspire confidence and provide some stability then. And I think that I'm a leader that they could really count on in that kind of time. I would be a very collaborative governor. I would work very well with all the department directors to make sure that they tightly manage their budgets, that they are customer service oriented, and I would, I think, have quite a good rapport directly with the voters and with the citizens, and help them understand what was going on in the government on their behalf, and really listen to them to make sure what they needed was being done.
All right, we'll dig in at least one more time here on TV before Election Day and on the radio, so good luck to you.
Thank you, Dan.
All right, when we come back, your state of mind. Stay with us. Your state of mind is important to us here. Let's take a look at how you get involved. 228-1886 is the voicemail number. Leave us one. Email us at stateofmind@myiritv.com or tweet and Facebook post at Dan York Show. Don't forget the E. Jess, who, by the way, is Employee of the Month here at the company, loved this voicemail. I think Laura did too. Check this one out.
I stopped watching it because it seems like you're hesitating in the middle of sentences and talking slurred. Sounds like you're half in the bag all the time. Well, maybe if you sober up, I'll start watching you again. Thank you. Bye-bye.
What I couldn't figure out is, how would you know if I sobered up? Unless you watch. You know, I pause sometimes, and I think, it's an ad-lib show. Come back, Lee. Get me a beer, will you? Good night.